Anyway,
well, let's get started here as everybody's logging in, or as Bob is admitting them from the waiting room, whatever terminology we use there. Questions or some success stories from the last few days before we get going?
Rachel signed a couple people up. She's upgraded a couple people, a couple families.
Good.
Yeah, actually one family and one individual. She did an individual this morning.
Excellent.
I just enrolled my first one yesterday.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good. I enrolled my first one today as well. And I tried to post a video to the group, but something happened.
No, it's in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it just showed up here a minute ago.
Okay.
So no, it's in the group. Good. So we've got 3 different people have done at least one enrollment virtually. Jane, you've done some renewals virtually. Yeah. Excellent.
I have 2 enrollments.
Oh yeah.
Paul, you've done a couple of virtual enrollments.
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Good job.
And I was seeing from her post anyway, I haven't seen her on the meeting here yet, is Larry and Olga did 201,000 in renewals last weekend in conjunction with their virtual testing. So that's not a bad weekend. So good. Anybody having any challenges getting the vertical or the virtual enrollments going?
We have not enrolled one yet. We've done 4 or 5. I think maybe we've kind of figured out some of the issues. I think we're not, they're not seeing the value as much.
Okay.
So we've made a few changes. So hopefully, but it's like, you know, the 4th one, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah. Well,
we're having a little bit of a, we're just like anything new. We're trying to figure out, you know, we've got the new enrollment. Now we've got to figure out a nice system to get their belts to them, their uniforms to them. We're going to be driving. A lot of people are still feeling a little, actually somebody showing up to their house. I don't know if they're going to the supermarket or just getting things on Amazon, but that's
I'm on it.
Yeah. But Jimmy, what were you saying was the challenge?
So we just haven't had the we don't have the system down yet to where, so we've made the enrollment, we've done a renewal, and the new enrollment was yesterday, 12 months, $297 per month, and now we just have to get that system in habit of delivering the belt, then going and delivering the uniform, and then the new enrollment folder to them. So that's in the works, though. It's not a huge challenge, but
you might use the phrase that I liked, and we've used it and it seems to work, but we don't have enough sampling to know if it's perfect. But would you like us to deliver it like delivery food, or pick it up like takeout, so that it's relevant to what they're doing anyway? I'm assuming in California they can still get delivery food and takeout food.
Yeah.
Because then it normalizes it, rather than you coming in and infringing upon their home. There's another group of businesses that also do, you know, there's food delivery and takeout and pickup delivery. Yeah. So now if they're going to, they shouldn't have a problem with you coming to their house, because it's essentially the same as you delivering.
We gave them those options.
But I guess I'm specifically saying, say it like the food thing, so that they hear it. But you may have done that. To be thorough.
Yeah, and UPS, FedEx, USPS, any number of things. Yeah, I can't see that being a big deal, Jimmy. You just got to do it.
Well, it's not a big deal. We just got to get used to, like I said, getting used to the habits of okay, this person needs this person. It just getting used to it, just like anything.
Sure. Yeah, to me, anything you're doing with all the students is like, if you're doing stripes every week, you can certainly just put them in the mail every week if that's easier. But when you're doing a graduation, you're doing belts, you know, just have everybody drive through, and from this time to this time, you know, we're doing a drive-through pickup, and you can set a table out there, and if you want, have somebody wearing a mask and all the crap, but just, you know, have them drive through, give them the belts as they come through, or the books or the training aids or whatever it might be. And it works out just fine.
We've also just approved the Elite Digital ad today. I just got an example of what was what they were doing, and so I approved that. So hopefully in the next week or so we'll have a whole bunch more leads to work with.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good. So any other quick success stories or challenges? Olga, I saw you logged in here somewhere. Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I had to take a call.
That's fine. Tell us about your big renewal weekend.
Well, so yeah, like I posted, we had quite a few renewals in the last, the virtual few weeks. We did a total value of a little over 200,000 in contract value. So collected a few down payments, and my goal is right now within the next couple of weeks to do the oh by the way conversation and try to get it paid in full. So for graduation, we selected 8 slots on schedule 1, so 15-minute increments. So we scheduled our graduation from 1 to 3, which would allow 10 cars for each time slot, and it was so smooth. I mean, we finished was like 3 or 5. So, obviously it was our first time doing it, but it was probably the smoothest graduation that we've ever done. So we have Boys and Girls Club close across the street. And of course they're closed, plus they're closed on Saturday anyway. So we had set up some chairs and signs so people would park across the street, and then we would wave them down because we could fit 3 cars as a drive-through in our parking lot. And so it was never too backed up. And people were, coming through really nicely. We had music playing, we hung balloons everywhere, and we had people were really, really happy. Like, they were so appreciative. And I think people, are sitting at home and they were needing something to do. So 86% of our students actually drove through, and only 14% we had to make deliveries to, which again, they were just so touched. And, some of ours, we're in Oregon, so some of them live like in the middle of nowhere. So it was a nice drive. So they were also really thankful that we came out in the middle of nowhere to see them. But yeah, it went really, really well. We also did it on Zoom, so some families were able to watch. And then we did a couple of Facebook Lives. I think some of you guys saw that too. But yeah, like I said, again, our leadership renewal rate, maybe some of you remember my surprise a month or 2 ago when we realized, a couple of months ago, that I thought our renewal rate was 90% because most of the people said yes. But as I was, awakened by our masters when they said, well, hey, you're not asking everybody, you're just asking the ones that would say yes. So we asked everybody, and 79% of them said, join the leadership. So I'm really happy with those results. That's a huge jump from 26%. So now we just need to do with enrollments. So we're still at 1.
I think that an important point though, Olga, is that everybody shouldn't be afraid. There's a couple of things about that. You should be doing renewals now. The people that you're getting in to do the online classes are automatically raising their grade up as students. Maybe they were even B students before, but now because they're taking the effort to do online classes and they're doing a little bit more to do online classes, that raises in some ways their grade because they're putting a little bit more effort. They're maybe a little more focused on that because they're not doing all the other stuff in their life, because you're offering something that they didn't offer, raising their grade. So then you get some spectacular results like what you're getting. So those effects, everybody should be paying attention to and be less afraid. I think some people are not asking for renewals right now because, oh, it's this situation, but it should be maybe the opposite, and they should be learning from your results.
Yeah, and what we did, thank you, Master Moody, we also got on Century, they have this outstanding attendance stripe. And we usually, we're one of those schools, we just do the electrical tape. So we don't have any exciting stripes. So this was the first exciting stripe that our students have ever gotten. So everybody who joined us at least once in our virtual classes, we gave them that outstanding attendance stripe. So it was really exciting for our members as well, that, it was an extra, like, hey, you're doing good, thank you. So every person that I striped, I always tell them this is for, being adaptable and staying the course on your journey to black belt no matter what. So that's what this stripe signifies, that no matter the situation, we're not going to deviate and we're going to continue. So hopefully reframing them to stay the course and not say, oh, I can't afford it anymore.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff Patterson, I see you there. Jeff, you've had different results with different groups of your students. I mean, since you have several different curriculum going, explain to everybody what's happening there.
Well, with the signups, I've had 3 virtually, so that's okay. But normally we sign up 30, 35 a month, so that's kind of hurting a little bit. The kids program is doing really well. We've lost about maybe 4 or 5 out of our student body because of this. Or when I say lost, I mean either had to put on a couple month hold or they've quit. But the problem is right now we're facing is, 85%, 90% of our student body is adults. We have very few kids here. We have about 375, or before this happened, we had about 375 active adults. And so I have 3 adult programs, mainly my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, my Muay Thai, and my Tai Chi. The Tai Chi program, for the most part, is doing okay. There's a lot of senior citizens in that group. They're hanging around, they're doing the virtual classes, all is good. But the Muay Thai and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is our 2 biggest programs, are getting hammered. I've got a lot of students that are, they work, they're 20 or in their 20s, early 30s, and they work in the service industry or whatever. They don't have really good jobs. And, we're losing, in the last few weeks, we've been losing 2 to 4 of them every day. So
everyone's stimulus check just got deposited, said my mid-20s sister-in-law, just FYI, all of her friends today. So
yeah, it's supposed to be by tomorrow.
But that's about where we're at with the different programs.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. And this is really a good opportunity in the midst of a little bit of a crisis to understand a little bit more about marketing, about targeting, right? And this is the same conversation that I had over and over and over and over and over back, during the recession, near depression that happened, into Bush, beginning of the Obama administration, is when you're targeting who you want to teach. It's one reason that I personally like upper middle class families, not single moms, but 2-parent households, homeowners. When you go through that list of targeting, that's why I like that audience, is if I have the parents are college educated, they're in a management job, you've got 2 parents in the household, and they're homeowners, they are much less likely to get impacted by any of this stuff, right? Than if it's a 24-year-old who's a waiter, as an example. So, 27-year-old male in the last recession, adult males without a college diploma, under 30, they got hammered worse than anybody. And then you can take a racial breakdown. So if you were Black and you were under 30 and you had less than a college diploma, you were pretty much screwed. And if you had less than a high school diploma, you were unemployable. And that cycle happens over and over and over again, right? So right now, you have about 10% of the economy that has been wiped out as far as working. But the ones that have been wiped out as far as working aren't the people who are, executives at Amazon, or they're executives for Walmart. They're the ones that are frontline waiter, waitresses, frontline service, nail tech, work frontline retail. So jobs that tend not to be, one, don't require a college degree, two, tend to be under 30 years old, three, especially if they are males, tend to be the ones that get hit the hardest and the most quickly, right? So Jeff, what you're seeing now is a reflection of the full cycle back to what happened in, what was it, 10 or 12 years ago now. What were we at? 2008-ish, yeah, 2008-ish. And it's a full cycle back to, the recession that walloped me back in when the savings and loans, when Neil Bush and gang imploded the S&L industry. So when you're looking at how you're going to rebuild your business, there's a couple of things that I've heard that are just truisms generally. One is, you could build a big MMA business based upon 18 to 30-year-olds, but 18 to 30-year-old males are always flaky. And then when you end up in a situation, and this is not a typical recessionary event, this is a black swan if there ever was one, but it's an event where that's the audience that's going to get whacked the worst, right? The female employees are less likely to get hit as hard, although under 30, less than college diploma, working in service, they're getting whacked as well. But what you find is if you build a program around 18 to 30-year-olds, that's the ones that are most vulnerable no matter what happens if there's any low ripples. Does that make sense, Jeff? So it's one of those things and I know you and I have been talking about this for quite a while. It's, again, one of those reasons why building up the Strong Family program and on the other programs, on the Muay Thai and the BJJ, intentionally targeting 40-year-olds who are lawyers, 40-year-olds who are doctors, 45-year-olds who are professionals, rather than targeting 25-year-olds, creates a much more stable program. And it attracts a group of people who are now and always more likely to be able to pay a higher tuition as well. Does that make sense, Jeff? And
yeah, we have been targeting the older people to try to get, or not older, but 40-year-old clientele for those programs. But the thing is for every one of those we bring in, we probably bring in 12 that are in the other area because they're hitting the advertising too. So it's just kind of, even though we're focusing our intent there, that's kind of where the majority of the student body is coming from, is that age group. And part of that, I hear you. I've been trying to push the kids program as well. I do like the stability of that. But for me, and my passion, I love doing jujitsu and I love being on the mat playing. And so it takes a younger crowd usually. There's very few 50-year-olds that are going to get on the mat and want to play with me, So it's like finding people that have the physical ability to do that is one thing as well.
Well, you are talking about the differentiation between your hobby and your business, right? So you've got to be making that objective decision at every moment. I can go all the way back to Junior Institute in the 70s. We had a great stable of kickboxers, and bless them, but the people who wanted to be professional fighters were never going to contribute a dime to the organization, other than some of them became pretty decent staff members. Hell, the best instructor I've probably ever seen was Mike Coles, who was part of that group, and of course Jeff Smith, et cetera. But you do have to separate, what your hobby is and your and what your target business is and what that stability is. And you're absolutely right. I mean, that is the group that is getting hammered. If you take the general population right now, it's maybe 10%, but that tends to be a 10% swath across more or less the bottom of the socioeconomic. And there's exceptions to that. Boeing shutting down and GM and Ford shutting down is certainly an exception to that. But as she has said, is, they're hitting their $1,200 checks today or tomorrow or, this week sometime in most cases. Plus, if they're drawing unemployment, they're getting their normal unemployment plus I think it's another $600 a week. So more or less 2,400 a month plus typically 50% of what their income was going to be, more or less. Different states are different. But they're, in many cases, they're actually, once they've applied for and they're receiving benefits, they're actually receiving more money than they were making already in some of those categories, which creates its own set of problems. But it's one of those things to remember, Jeff. And then the question is it worth it to spend disproportionately more to get the target audience that you want, and then put disproportionate effort in to looking for referrals and development from there? So, would it be worthwhile, to get a list of, say, every attorney in your area who's under, say, between 30 and 45 or 50, every doctor in your area? Would it be worthwhile to target exclusively income levels 100,000 plus? That type of thing, where it might cost you more to get one, and maybe there's some Portland area magazine subscribers that you could get and cross-reference. But there may be some ways to, rather than just saturating, Google and social media, some ways to really target in better and get to that audience better. And, right now it's about thriving with whatever you can thrive with. But as you come out of this, you don't want to rebuild on the same foundation and then recognize that it's vulnerable again. Is that making sense, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
I think everything you're saying is very applicable to everybody, sir.
It is. Yeah. Absolutely.
And everybody should be paying attention to that in terms of your marketing mix. If you get a bunch of broke people, same thing. If you get a bunch of the wrong mix, and even to expand and multiply, pay attention to those things and look for opportunities in some of those areas. Maybe you're getting a good marketing mix, but to look for all the lawyers, to look for all the people in those target markets, pay attention to what schools you're going into, and spending a lot more effort in a school that has really sweet demographics that are high income, close to you. Pay really close attention to that, not just the one where you happen to know the mom that knows the principal.
Yeah, exactly. And getting a bunch of lawyers may be a bad example, but you get the idea.
We don't want the lawyers.
I'm not sure I want the lawyers, but
maybe.
Yeah, but anyway, so let's shift gears a little bit. We've all had some conversation with some of our members, and I've seen some things where people just made like the wrong decision early on how to deal with things. Anyone who is doing transported after school care, make sure you set a time to talk to Master Smith and I. Dan, you and I talked extensively about that, and I think you're making a pretty good transition on it. Is that a fair statement? You're muted.
Yes, sir.
So
we haven't lost very many of them.
Yeah. Walk us through how that transition is going.
Well, what we did is we sent a letter to all of our students. And what we did is we offered them a choice of two things. I was kind of freaking out in the beginning, and I was just going to stop charging them for the after school, and I was just going to charge them for the karate portion. That's what I was going to do. And what we've done instead is we're still charging them for everything. We're getting them online, which they already are, and we're giving them a credit either for summer camp, or we're giving them a choice, because a lot of our people were on year-round anyway, so the summer camp was paid for. So they have a choice of an activities pass. And the activities pass is going to give them like $500 worth of stuff. And they'll get an activities pass for every month that we are online virtually. And it's worked out really well. I'm amazed that I have people that are paying me big money and they're still paying me. And some of them had to get daycare elsewhere. So I've been really, we've lost a lot of people, but we're really blessed because a lot of them we were able to keep. I think we've only lost maybe, out of our AMP after school kids, maybe we've lost 10 or 12 out of 61. Yeah. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah. I was talking to another member yesterday who wasn't as proactive as you are, and went and made some really bad decisions. And basically, they had 2/3 of their revenue was coming from after school, and they just stopped billing them all. I asked the question. I said, "Well, are these martial arts students, or are they there for daycare. Oh no, they're martial arts students. Well, then why aren't they still participating in your martial arts program? Well, because we just don't, when the school's out, it's like, well, okay. But if you compare that with what you did, Jan, and of course, you know, we did a pretty good strategy session, I think, on transitioning it, but you know, you're not taking a big hit on revenue on the thing. In fact, I like that post. I stole that, that last month you were actually up by $1,000 over same time last year. Now, let's make sure we hit 100,000 this month.
No promises.
Right.
I'm thinking positive.
Yep,
Well, let's say one other thing though that is also a benefit, because we have our parents that normally work and now they're home. Some of those people with their kids, the upgrade, the renewal that Rachel did today was one of those parents that was never renewed her kid because she didn't know what he was getting. Yeah. She's been home watching it and she's seen, and Rachel said it was an easy upgrade because now the mom was involved and knew what the child was getting by watching the Matt chats and all the stuff we've been doing. So that was good.
I'm glad you got
something about that.
I've got a lot of this going on at my school, and I'm going to start hitting up the parents because they're either holding the targets for the kids or they're making sure that they're in line in some way or they're focused in some way. And so I think that is a great upgrade.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, could I say something about that, Jan? And I think it applies to everybody. You're saying, well, no promises on 100,000, but you're pretty close normally. And I don't know if you've taken the time or people take the time to go, what would it take for me to get 100,000? And you're losing some income from your after school. But one area that we've talked about since the beginning of the year, the end of last year, is your percentage of people that pay in full. One area that we've been talking about is tiny tigers. I'm talking about you specifically, but everybody's got this gap. We've all got gaps where there's an area where we're not as efficient. In your case, I think, you know, I may be misstating, but I think it's the tiny tiger renewals and the paid in fulls. So if you took a piece of paper and said, if I had to get 100,000 this month, and where would I get that from? I don't think it would be that tough to draw that plan out and to say, well, I just need a few more people to pay in full. And with what you and Jimmy just said, I think that adds so much value. And with the I need some more of those tiny tigers or whatever you're calling them, little dragons or whatever you call them in your school. That's my word. But I need to get a real appropriate percentage of them to renew. Maybe that would equal 100,000 if you draw that plan out. So instead of maybe looking at it as I'm doing the business the way I've been doing it, and because I'm losing this chunk of business, and maybe that's harder to recoup this month, how would I, if I had to do the 100,000, what would that plan and what would that design look like? And that's one of the Jim Rohn quotes. I really like Jim Rohn. We don't talk about him much, but you know, design your life, because if you don't, what's everybody else's? I don't know, I'm screwing that quote up, but what's everybody else's plan for you? If you don't plan your life, what's everybody else's plan? Nothing or not much. It's something to that nature. But a lot of times I try to start, or I make my staff start the month out by drawing out how they're going to make their goal and what's the plan. So I don't know, Jan, I think maybe for everybody, if you said, if I had to make X dollars, what would that entail? There's probably 2 or 3 battle plans you could put together that would get there.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I haven't done that. I haven't come up with, we're losing this much, so we need to have this plus this. But we have been pushing the paid in fulls. Rachel and I just talked about this morning with the stimulus checks coming in and everything, get as many paid in fulls as we can. So
I'm just thinking out loud, but instead of pushing it, I think you should, but what would the battle plan look like? How many of those do you need? And I think that encourages everybody and puts a number in their mind so you know what that number is. And we all know that. It's like when we tell people to get black belt, more people get black belt. I mean, that's sort of the magic thing about setting goals and all that crap. I don't mean to make a speech about it, but it kind of does work, and we don't do that for ourselves much. So it might be a valuable exercise. You and Rachel are pretty damn powerful people, and I know that's true of a lot of you, of everybody on this call, or you wouldn't be on this call with us right now. If you put the battle plan together, I think it would make a massive difference.
Right. You're exactly right. And if everybody would start the month off, and we always did that in, when we were doing the June reschools, is that everybody had a goal that they had for the month but it wasn't, you just set a goal. You had to like work it from how many leads do you need, how many appointments, how many enrollments, how many renewals, all the way down the line till you get that, to show how you were going to get that goal of, you know, 80,000 or 100,000 or 60,000 or whatever your goal is. You've got to have all of the other things in place. And then if you're going to get 100 leads or 200 leads, then you have to write it down another notch. Where are those leads going to come from? And so it's an ongoing thing that if you don't sit down and make a plan, you know, and I guess the quote is, if you fail to plan, plan to fail. So just get that goal set each month, and even more so now, and especially how to accomplish that goal, not just set a arbitrary number.
Yeah, and let's walk back. Olga, walk us through how you accomplished the renewals that you did, and what maybe felt a little bit different in the virtual world versus normally, if anything.
Okay, well, the renewals, they were nominated in class, so that was before virtual. But as far as the renewal conferences, I mean, I don't think anything felt different. Just, you know, the fact that we were on screen and I had to hold up the paper, and but yeah, I mean, there was really no difference except for they were across the screen. And actually it was easier, and I think it's easier for us to shut up and be quiet after you give them the prize, because, you know, the assumption can be made, you know, something's wrong with the connection, right? So you don't feel as awkward. So I actually think it helps because once you give them the prize, you just stare at them. And a couple of times, well, one particular time I had a family say, "Oh, are we supposed to say something?" And I said, "Yes." You know, so actually I think that part is easier because, you know, you're supposed to do it, and a lot of the times it's that awkward silence that we have to, you know, be good at. So, but I don't know, Master Oliver, I don't think there's anything, like, honestly, there was nothing different. Yeah, there was nothing different. Yeah. I can't come up with anything.
Olga, I have a question. This is
Sure.
Chris from Utah. Did you have them fill out the leadership application before you did the conference? How did you
Yes, sir. So some of them had them. Some of them, like one family, were literally just handed them the nomination, and then, you know, everything was shut down. And actually, yeah, so they never even got the application. So some of them already completed them. Some of them already had the teacher sign it. So we just dealt with what we had. So if they had it completed, great. If they didn't, I just said, well, here's the application which you would normally complete, and it's mostly for you to kind of understand what, you know, the program is about. So I just read through some of the stuff and explained to them what it was, like I would, you know, when it was filled out. But I just told them, you know, because of the current circumstances, you know, we'll just do away with it. So, you know, it wasn't. So some of them had those, some of them didn't. It wasn't a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Jan, you've done how many renewals so far? Or Rachel's done how many renewals so far?
I think just 2. She did one this morning and one 2 days ago, I think, that family that she did. She may have done. Rachel, did you do any more? She's on.
Just the 2, but it has been nice. I've been able to be a little bit more hands-on with the renewal prepping instead of just delegating it to the instructors, because it's easy to like hop on the calls. The other really nice thing to point out is that I like my whole renewal conference today was recorded. You know, Zoom is set to automatically record in our account now. So for training purposes and stuff like that, that's really nice.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How many of you asked? You had 2, one today and one a couple days. How many conferences or how many people have you even conferenced?
Just those 2. That was it. And we do have a most of our students who've been on are the renewals, which is great, but it's a kind of a problem because that means, you know, so we've had a few instructors meetings about getting all of our reaching out to the people that are in our basic program, making sure they're on those classes. but the ones that have been on, they're not quite prepped yet. And so like Monday, I was on all of the classes and had them doing their black belt goal sheets and different things like that, making sure that kind of stuff is done. And so we're gonna, we've got all of our students taken care of now. We've got the marketing started, and we are now gonna focus on the renewals and prepping them and inviting them as soon as they're ready.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing for both Rachel and Olga is that they both had been following the renewal, kind of the renewal folder steps that we had. So most of these that they talked to already had a good dose of pre-framing, which hopefully everybody in your school, even in these basic classes that you're doing online, every class should be a dose of that pre-framing for black belt. And that's what gets them ready. And that's the part that I don't want anybody to get confused with. If you don't pre-frame them, whether they're in your school or online, it's going to be hard to renew them. So you have to make sure that you're giving them the right message. You're using those black belt pre-framing words, or the words of encouragement, and spotlighting them and letting them know how they're doing, or correcting them in a positive way.
Yeah, well, and
it's
so,
the same what you normally do.
Well, exactly right. A couple things that I think everyone should really do. One is take a look at what you did in April last year. Take a look at what you did May last year. Look at how many enrollments you did, how many renewals you did, what cash you did, and then sit down and set a goal for yourself to beat each of those numbers. And what we want to do right now is we want to go full bore at launching a renewal blitz now through mid-May, perhaps late May, but you know, worst case right now, April 14th, 15th to the middle of next month. And what you want to do is you want to go through everyone who's not renewed, and it gives you a secondary reason to get on the phone and make sure that each and every one have been involved with the video Zoom classes. Again, I talked to somebody yesterday, and their metric for retention, they said, well, we've been really working on retention. I said, well, what percentage of your students have been on your interactive Zoom classes? Well, 20%, but a lot of the others have gone through some of our online curriculum. Well, see, you know, if I had some videos somebody could renew, but they hadn't been in class for 3 weeks, there's still a dropout, right? We want to make sure that all of those renewal prospects are 100% attending the Zoom classes, and that we schedule them all this week for a progress update. Again, a private lesson with a progress review. As Olga said, the way they more or less tripled the number of renewals is they just asked 3 times as many people to renew. It really was about that complicated. Is that a fair statement, Olga? So, yeah, what we don't judge renewals by is our closing rate of people we ask. We judge our renewals by what percentage of people that we have enrolled do we end up with renewing, right? So if we've been averaging 20 enrollments a month and we end up with 15 or 17 renewals, then we're happy. On the other hand, if I ask 3 people and they all 3 say yes, well, that's not a very meaningful number. The meaningful number is what percentage of new enrollments end up on the higher level program. Is that making sense to everybody? Now, I know we're doing these all hands meetings. So one of the problems is, you know, we have an awful lot of people who are already really good at renewals already. And this is just making a shift to doing it on camera versus face-to-face. And then a fair number of fairly new people who aren't real familiar with the concept to begin with, right? So let me take a step back and just kind of review a couple of real basic things. And so everybody who's been around for a while, I apologize for it be a little bit too simplistic. But what we want to make sure we're doing is we're enrolling everybody on that year enrollment, but presenting that as a trial enrollment. That's just a quarter of the way to black belt. You know, in the ballet program, you have an 8-year curriculum, right? So it's an 1/8 of the way to that level of mastery. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they use the same basic metrics. But we start on a trial enrollment until somebody qualifies to train to black belt and beyond, or whatever the equivalent is, purple belt or so in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then what we're doing is we're allowing them to commit to and train to black belt and beyond. And when we do that, what we're doing is having one price point that's about double the level that they enrolled with, right? So if they enrolled at $247 a month, it's more like $497 a month. And that's the price that they would pay at white belt when they renew. That's not the face rate. We wanted to actually be, they're paying about double what they were paying before. And then we have another rate that's maybe a 50% bump or a little less, right? As a fallback. And I keep seeing schools who say, well, everyone was going into leadership, we got rid of the fallback. And then my next question is what were you charging for leadership? And what they were charging for leadership is maybe a 20% or a 50% bump. They weren't doubling the tuition. Well, if you're charging the rate of what the fallback position was, then maybe you don't need the fallback position, but you're cheating yourself. So let's make leadership about double, and then the fallback position about a 50% bump, or maybe even a little less, right? The reason for the fallback is so that you don't push anybody out the door because they can't afford the leadership program. You have some place to go with them. But the ratio should be 75% to 90% going into the more expensive program, 10 to maybe 20, 25% going into the fallback position. Is that making sense to everybody?
Yeah.
And then there's the question of, well, what's the value add? If I'm going from a year enrollment to a 4-year enrollment, what more are they getting? Well, for the commitment to train to black belt and beyond, you really don't need a plus. In other words, it doesn't have to be you get this now and you get this plus this later. It's more applicable to, I'm enrolled in 1st grade and now I'm committing to 6th grade. I'm in high school, I'm committing to college. It's more applicable to I'm committing to a higher level of curriculum and a continuation of the curriculum than it is there's a higher level of material, if you will. There's going to be a higher level material because it's year 2, year 3, year 4 curriculum. Same reason why a private preschool is going to be considerably less than going to Harvard, right? So at each tier, there's a higher level anyway. But then when you go into the leadership program, that's where there's a higher level of content that's involved. And again, that infomercial we did years ago that explains the difference, I think is really good. It's at that milehighblackbelt.com site on week 5. But I would suggest if you haven't, go through all of that and master the language, because it has me explaining the different levels that we take people through, and here's what the leadership program is, and here's why you would want to go in with that. And then when you do the renewal, essentially what you're doing is they're first setting a goal that they want to continue, they want to be a black belt, they want to achieve at a high level. And then really what you're doing is the conference is all about putting them into leadership, and then the fallback position is in the black belt, right? So I know everybody who's more advanced, that's what you've been doing forever, but you've got to make sure that you understand that to begin with. We want to be at right now, I'd like everybody to be at about $297 a month for a new student tuition, but then that would mean that leadership should be about $597 a month. And it makes a huge difference in your revenue. Basically, it makes a student worth twice as much on a monthly basis, 10 or 20 times as much on a lifetime basis. So you really want to get that process down. But what I would suggest we do is everyone who's not renewed, and starting with the white belts, then going to the gold belts, going to the orange belt, you start from the bottom up. Let's make sure this week, every one of them is scheduled for a progress update. So we want to get them on a private class. We want to work with them. We want to make sure that we've got them fully engaged with the online materials, the additional curriculum, the Zoom classes, and get them fully engaged. And obviously the ones that haven't been engaged, you're going to take a little bit longer to get them turned into a renewal than the ones who are fully engaged and just love it, right? But our highest priority, and we've been talking about this for 5 weeks, has always been the 1st-year students, the first year students who were just on the basic program, and then the students who are on black belt but not on leadership. Those are the ones that we've always wanted to make sure that we're on the phone to, that we're emailing, we're texting, we're following up. If they've missed a class, we get hold of them. And frankly, your class attendance should be way up in this virtual environment rather than down. All of the other excuses of soccer, games, soccer practice, baseball, whatever else might be going on in the spring, all those other excuses are gone. They're not having the church youth group in most cases. They're not having all that other stuff. So really, you should be able to have them attending class 4 or 5 times a week. The martial arts part of this, other than for the kids, other than whatever academics they're doing, she really should be dominant in their case. Does that make sense? So what we want to do is we want to get that list. We want to get every one of them on the phone, whether they have or have not been attending the virtual classes. We want to get them set up for a progress update, one-on-one, by Zoom. We want to go through a review of progress, a review of attendance, solve any problems or any questions or any concerns that they have, and make sure that they're fully engaged. If they've been fully engaged, then we move them to the next steps on the renewal. And we want to make sure that we've overloaded them. And Jane, you said something very valuable, or a lot of things, but one of the things you said valuable was you're afraid you hadn't shown them the value yet. Well, on the enrollments and the renewals, all the things that we normally do to show them the value of the training, we should plus that by 100, 200, 300% now that it's in this virtual world. So we've got to overwhelm them with testimonials. We've got to overwhelm them with proof of outcome. We've got to overwhelm them with references of other people who have done this. We've got to overwhelm them with the value of what we're doing. Is that making sense? So what we want to do this week is schedule progress updates for everyone who's not renewed. That gives you a chance to make sure that they have in fact been fully engaged. If they're not engaged, then you need to fix that first. Don't take somebody who's been out of class for 4 weeks and pitch them on the upgrade program. What you want to do is you want to make sure you get them fully engaged and that they understand all the tools that you have available and all of that stuff. And then once they get fully engaged, then we're going to schedule a follow-up progress update, let's say a week later, in order to make sure once they're fully engaged, that you're going to move them to the next step. Is that making sense for everyone? So it's really important. And I'm serious. Go back and look at what you did in April last year. Look at what you did on enrollments. Look at what you did on renewals. Look at what you did on cash, and make sure that we beat every one of those numbers. Now we've beat to death already the marketing opportunities, but I'll tell you, I'm just amazed at how effective a lot of this stuff is being right now in this environment. So if you haven't pulled the trigger on absolutely everything you can be doing on marketing, you've got to go back and really get to that point. If you haven't really gotten comfortable with doing the online intros and the enrollments, frankly, the only way you're gonna get there is you practice a few and then you just jump in full bore. So make sure you've jumped in full bore and that you're on top of that. But now what we want to do as well is we want to get that list and we want to set those progress updates, and we want to do more renewals than we've ever done in April, May in our history.
And I would make sure that everybody does a visualization sheet. That's the best way to kick it off. And everybody who turns one in gets a stripe, and it's, part of the regular stripe process. But then once they turn in the small sheet and get one stripe, I would then contact those people and have them do the big visualization poster. And I would show everybody what that poster looks like. So you have a few samples there, and tell them that visualization poster is going to be worth 10 stripes. And especially the time they have at home, if you give them a few ideas on what the poster looks like. So by showing a few of them, if you haven't done that in the school before, because sometimes they don't know where to start. But when you give them something to look at, that somebody else has done, it gives them a chance to say, okay, good, I can do something like that. Oh, I understand what he's talking about, because some people aren't very good visualizing. So they need a picture of what it is you want them to visualize, and then they can put their own words into it and make it their own poster. But I know before, when we used to have them do it without having a few on display, they were pretty lame. They weren't, they were pretty much off target. But once we started getting a few good ones in, and we started showing everybody what the good ones look like, and we don't say, look, here's some of the good ones. We just say, here's some of the visualization posters that some of our students have done before. And hold them up right on your meeting when you're talking about it, you know, when you're on your class. And if you talk that up and you get them to do that, when they come by the school to pick up their stripes or whatever, or they can send you a picture of the poster, so they don't even have to drive the poster by the school. But the visualization sheet, they're gonna text it or email it, or just take a picture of it and send it to you, and then you'll put that down on their stripe chart. So they'll be getting stripes for that, as well as their other character worksheets. And this is a very good time to hit those character worksheets hard.
Yep. Jimmy, you have a question?
I had a question for you. That visualization sheet, we use it on a regular basis. And so just considering the the video nature of things, what do you think about the if we would actually fill that visualization sheet out, like do a conference online and actually fill it out, you know, as we are talking to them. So what do you think about, what would you think about yourself as being a black belt, and just fill in the dots, and that might expedite the process? I mean, I just thought of it right now.
The only reason I wouldn't do that, Jimmy, is because in that visualization poster, not everybody's going to do one, right? So we don't want to go after the ones that we have to force and tell them how to fill it out. We want the ones that are excited enough about it first, that really jump in and do it. And that's why I like to go to the poster, because the ones that do the poster, you know, if they do the paper, they're automatically at least a B. And then, I mean, just the visualization sheet. And if they do the poster, they're automatically moved up to an A, and then they're a good prospect, because that's a family project. It's not just the student project. You know, that visualization sheet is a family project. It's not just a student project. Now, if your students haven't done them before, in other words, you never had them displayed before, take some good ones that your black belts have filled out and show them, or send them copies of what they're supposed to look like, so then they have an idea. But usually that visualization sheet is not very hard for them to fill out. I've never had anybody that came back to me and said, we didn't know what to do. Okay. It's pretty simple. And you want to save that conference for when you're going to take them to the next step of the ones who are already, what we call, when they hand in that sheet, they're raising their hand. When they hand in the poster, they're raising both hands. And I guarantee you, when you start talking to the ones that do the poster, your percentages are going to improve drastically. Yeah. When you just go cold turkey on the ones that you think are ready, and you haven't really gotten any feedback from their side. See, if I give you all the feedback, I don't know how much of it you're absorbing until I get something back. And then when I get something back, that gives me a way. Now, when they're in class, I can get that. I can read that body language and stuff, but sometimes online, it's harder to get that. The ones who have a lot of stripes, you always know that they're already pre-framed very well, and the parents have to be impressed if they have a lot of stripes, because that means they've been doing all this stuff around the house. And so we tell them that that's part of the reason they were recommended, is because they're already showing those black belt leadership qualities. And that's why they're starting to develop those habits. And those are going to be the habits that are going to be ingrained in them on their journey to black belt. So they do them all the time, not just in martial arts. Yeah. And that's why we want to see him on the black belt program. See, when you have that kind of discussion with them.
And Matt Smith, before we run out of time, right, is what we want to do right now is go through the list of everyone who is not renewed. You know, all of the basic enrollments, and your priority, of course, starts at the bottom and works its way up. It starts with the newest students and works its way up. But what we want to do is start on that list and get each and every one of them on the phone and schedule each and every one of them for a progress update this week. And in that progress update, there's going to be a spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, you have people who last time you had you know, they were gone a week the last time you had physical classes in the school, and they haven't been to any of the virtual classes. Well, that's somebody you need to get fixed and get fully engaged in the new system. Then you have somebody who's just so in love with everything that you're doing, and they're doing the virtual classes, and they were already being prepped ahead of time for renewal. Well, those are the laydowns. Those are ones that you can renew this week. Just like Olga was talking about, they just asked everyone that they had been prepping already, and they renewed most of them, right? So those are the ones you can renew this week. The rest of them you need to get up and running and engaged in this new system for the time being, and then set a follow-up progress update for next week, but also set a, let's see which classes you can come to this week. Here are the times that are available. When you take the class on Thursday, I'd like to touch base a little bit after that class. In fact, what I'll do is I'll send you a note to meet me in a separate room for a little bit, and we'll do a follow-up from there. Those are the ones that you want to get fully up and running and engaged on everything, right? So just let's get started with, go through with everyone who's on basic, starting with the white belts, working our way up through. We're going to assume that everyone is a good prospect, but we're going to have a spectrum. And part of the spectrum is, have we gotten them engaged in this new situation? And if they've been fully engaged in this new situation, then we've got to get them on all of the steps on the renewal process. And we want to renew some this week and some next week. And the ones who weren't engaged yet, we want to get them engaged and get them renewed within the next 3 weeks. But what we're going to do is make the mission to renew everybody who is renewable in the school. That includes people on black belt, and that's people on basic. We're not going to be thinking in terms of some of these people will renew in July or September. No, we're going to renew them all in the next 4 weeks. What we have to do, though, is get the ones who haven't been engaged. And then the ones, once we get them engaged, we have to get them on the prep steps. And the ones who are already on the prep steps and are fully engaged, we've got to get them closed right away and not pretend that there's any difference now than there's ever been. The only difference is we're asking them by video rather than we're asking them face-to-face. Does that make sense, sir?
And I like the way that Master Oliver has given everybody step one. And step one is when you make that list of everybody from your white belts all the way up, everybody who's in basic, you then, before you talk to them, you've got to look at that list, and then you're going to move those from that list over to the next column that says column A, and those are the ones that you feel are already engaged and prepped and pre-framed. You know, sometimes it's an orange or a gold belt or one of the belts that's past a few belts because you never talk to them. And, you know, you don't want to let them rot on the vine. That's why we try to get them at white belt is the goal. And this would be a good time to, you know, as this special, you know, coronavirus pandemic that's going on, we're going to give everybody the white belt scholarship that does that. And remember, the white belt scholarship is a discounted version off of your full price.
And Master Smith, we can get into all of that tomorrow.
Okay, I didn't know.
We're doing renewals all week. The first thing is you've got to make sure you've got hold of every student who was on basic, everyone who's in the first year, and you want to make sure that you have them fully engaged. We need to be at 90–95% participation every week on the live Zoom meetings, as well as all of the other assignments and the video curriculum and all that other stuff, but we want to be at 95% full engagement every week with all of our students. And if we're not on top of the attendance, if we're not on top of making sure they're fully engaged, we're going to have huge dropout problems, right? And some of those people who freak out on the financial side and so forth, well, part of that is because you haven't exerted the leadership and gotten them engaged and kept them focused on the positives here on these things. We want to make sure we keep them engaged and we keep them focused on the positives. You know, this isn't going to be that long until things get back going in a normal direction, whether they'll be back to completely normal or not. You know, it'll take a while, but things are going to be, you know, this is a short-term spike, and people who are taking a short-term financial beating, well, there's a lot of support there, and some of them don't even know what the support is. So you should be able to have the conversation of, well, what happened? Well, you know, do you know that the Paycheck Protection Plan is going on, you know, to give employers the ability to pay your salary? So you might go talk to your employer about whether they've gotten that to kick in or not. It'll probably take a week or a couple of weeks for that to kick in. Did you also know that unemployment is plus $600 a week? Did you also know that the stimulus check should be hitting your account this week? So a lot of times they don't know, and they just hyper catastrophize and get freak out on all this stuff. So you've got to exert that leadership. And of course, with some of them, you know, you may have to work with them on the finances a little bit. But for our schools, what we know is we can have an all-time record month. We just have to pull the trigger on the marketing checklist. We've got to get really good at converting the enrollments virtually. We've got to go through and communicate with every student and get those progress updates going. And then the ones who are ready, we ask, and the ones who aren't, we get them prepped. So that's the stepwise things. Again, hopefully last week and the week before, you pulled the trigger on all the different marketing steps on the checklist. If not, double, and even if so, double or triple down on that. Make sure that your enrollment flow is as good as it's ever been. And that's just about getting better and better and better at the virtual process. Jan, you mentioned it again earlier, but make sure that all the paperwork you would give them, the videos they would get, the visuals that they would get, the explanation that they're getting. You know, you don't just throw a bunch of people into a class on Zoom with a bunch of other people and expect that that's going to create the enrollment. That's not the way you do it in the normal process with your school. It's got to be that personal relationship and that understanding of the value, and them understanding the developmental of the process.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Master Oliver. It's not really that much different than we should be doing normally to have a plan and then meet all of those points. It may have a little bit different flavor because you can't do events, you can't do certain things, and it's going to be online. Don't panic. Do the same thing. We're just doing it a little bit with a little different flavor.
Yeah, yeah. But we'll store up all of the questions that got raised, unless it's on the tip of your tongue right now. Post it in the Facebook group, and then all week we're going to focus predominantly on having the best renewals that you've ever had, doing a massive renewal blitz, getting the entire school up into the next level program. And frankly, that's going to eliminate them asking to drop out of the program because they're recommitting to the program.
Don't panic about that when that happens. Just be ready to set new goals.
Exactly. Any quick questions before we call it a day? Adam? Adam?
Sorry about that. Yeah, sir. So yeah, Michigan, I'm getting my butt kicked currently. Our governor's not helping. She's giving fear every day in the news. She even made motorcycles, painting everything illegal. But anyway, so my quick question is, I had a student of mine. They were with me now for 3.5 years. They're on a scholarship. I told the dad back in November when the kid was doing swim that I'll give you credit when he comes back. So he came back, and now he's done like 16 Zoom classes, him and his brother. They did a chargeback, and the chargeback said that I must offer services, all that fun stuff. But they're in a discounted rate as it is. They're paying $288 for 2 kids. I gave him a scholarship back in 2017. So now that he canceled, I can't charge him anymore. and he wants to keep the kids going. He wants 3 free months. But what should I do with that?
Kick him the hell out. Maybe I missed something.
Why would he get 3 months, for not paying?
Well, one student was going, one wasn't, so I gave him a scholarship. I told him I'd give him credit. But his son used to help me probably 30 events and stuff. He would help out. The parents are pretty helpful. They used to be. But the dad just turned faces. He's owned 3 pharmacies. So
okay. Okay, but without hearing all of his career and everything, he came back and he was taking lessons, and then he charged back the charge.
Yeah.
And that's all within the last couple months.
Yeah, I got one more day. They've done 14 Zoom classes last month, and they just
then they charged back the payment
because it said that it wasn't in person. The Corona excuse and the credit card.
Okay, well, you just kick them out.
Okay.
I don't think there's giving them any 3 months of lessons and all that stuff. Once somebody just goes and charges back the card,
they get the 3 months added on to the end of the program as long as their program is current. If they go delinquent on anything, they've lost rights to everything.
Yeah, just kick them out. I mean, there's no long involved conversation about that. You're offering classes. On the deal with your governor, Adam.
He's scaring everybody.
Yeah, I know. Your governor's a moron.
I know.
On the short list for Biden's VP, by the way, is that there are several states where, at some level of government, they are way exceeding any normal of rationality, right? If somebody tells you can't drive from one house to the other, you can't be in your business even though you don't have a group of customers there, you can't be out for a walk, etc. They have exceeded any level of rationality and deserve a little bit of civil disobedience. That having been said, is you owe it to your students to be the voice of rationality and to exert leadership to keep their head on straight, right? So you need to be the one who's aware of what's going on, are knowledgeable and articulate about it, and are able to keep their head on straight, right? And really what you're doing is, no matter how histrionic some of your local politicians get to be, is you're the one that says, well, okay, but regardless of that, we want your child to keep developing academically. We want your child to continue to develop as far as higher levels of character, higher levels of goal setting ability, etc. And here's all the different things that we're doing. And frankly, it doesn't matter what the moron politician says, is you're still providing the service and you're still doing exactly what you're providing. Plus you're incentivizing them with the 2 months free at the end. So as long as you're over communicating that, most of your students are not only not going to give you a problem, most of them are going to be grateful and excited and happy that you're doing it. Are you going to have some that go hysterical? Sure you are. There are some people who catastrophize about things and lose their ability to think rationally. That's fine. You don't want to let that 1 or 2 examples shade anything else that you're doing. But, in the example of somebody who goes to the credit card company, charges back the payment, I don't tend to give those people a second chance. They're going to go do it again to you. Plus they've just screwed with my merchant account and everything else. So there's no particular reason to have somebody who's already proven to you once or twice that they're a problem and do anything to try to keep or rescue those people, right? Just be good enough at marketing. You have enough flow. There's the next bus on the way and you don't have to stress about things like that.
Oh yeah, because Michigan's going crazy. Everywhere you go, everything's blocked off. You have to walk one way into the store, walk out one way.
Yeah. But I understand. That doesn't have. If it does anything, it helps your business.
Yeah, exactly.
It helps what we're doing because we can get the message out about virtual classes. We'll have high receptivity rate. As very few others are doing anything similar. So it stands out. It gives you the ability to get really good press. It gives you the ability to market that through public schools, through daycares, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I couldn't agree with you more. As your governor has lost her mind and is drunk with power. And you know, we certainly should be in the point of, you know, I dare you to keep me from getting in my car, alone in my car, and going for a drive along the ocean or in the mountains. I mean, that's just crazy crap. It's like, I think it was Kentucky, where they were ticketing people for going into a drive-in church, and they were literally sitting in their car listening to the sermon on the radio all in one piece, and they were giving them $500 tickets. Well, that's not only unconstitutional, that's just, you know, that's just crazy. So
it's $1,000 misdemeanor in Michigan now.
Yeah, and which
I've followed them 3 times.
Yeah, which I would fight to the death on stupid, crazy, ridiculous, overreaching government levels who don't have the authority, and nor should they. Then they've lost all rationality. That's just crazy. But from a standpoint of your business, Adam, you got to stop worrying about that crap.
Okay, that's one last question real fast. So let's
ahead.
say 80% of my people I'm working with, there's that 20% that have gone crazy. Should
Sure.
I just say goodbye to them, not bring them back because they're going to be crazy even when they come back?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, exert some leadership and bring them down from the cliff.
Okay.
Right.
So I've tried a bit.
You talk to them, and Adam, I'm going to tell you this because we keep telling you this. You call them on the phone. There's no response by email and text. We keep getting answers. I just messaged this on Facebook
Messenger.
Yeah, we keep getting questions, and I've heard a few of you guys. Somebody messaged me on Facebook or emailed and texted me something. What do I do? Reading between the lines, I'm hearing, how do I respond on that media? And I made a big thing on it last night. I wrote back a big long thing. Number one thing is you call them and you get them in face to face. Is not going to happen now. So you have to do it, you know, by audio or video conference is better, but you talk to them for real. It's really not that big a deal most of the time if you talk to them in real life. All their anxiety and problems and all that stuff usually goes away when they get to yell at you a little bit, and then you just solve the problem.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So just don't, most of these problems are not that big a deal, and they've calmed down by the time they actually talk to you. But sending back any kind of media, Facebook, text, email, 100% of the time in a negative or emotional situation, 100% of the time is always bad. Yet we still get questions that I know you're all going to do that. So, you know, for thoroughness.
Or we get somebody emailed me to cancel their program and I cancel the program. No. You know, just
never.
Just delete until you actually have a communication with them. So no, Adam, you don't do that. And there's no reason to be canceling programs for all this stuff. Is you want them to be engaged, and you know, goes back to what Jeff was saying earlier. Okay, so 4 or 5 people are giving you cancel requests every day. Well, okay, but you have them on a year agreement. You have them on a 4-year agreement or a 5-year agreement. You know, don't just knee-jerk respond with these things. And one, it can drag out a little bit. 2, some of them are going to be freaked out about their finances for a week, and they made the mistake of watching the news and one thing or another, then all of a sudden they're fine again, right? So is it true that a percentage of your student body is going to have some severe financial issues? Sure. Most of the ones that are going to have the issues, though, are at the bottom 10%, not all, but most of them are at the bottom 10% to begin with. And most of them are going to be in the 18 to 30-year-old range. Most of them are going to be male, frankly. So there's a group of people that we know are most likely to have those kinds of problems. And there certainly are exceptions. You know, there's docs who have been furloughed because they're not doing optional stuff, et cetera. But mostly, you know, people, if they sit down to think about it, the light at the end of the tunnel on this thing is near term, right? When we were talking about the market a few weeks ago, that was the time to buy. It's up again today. It had its all-time, I think, 50-year record best week ever last week. You know, the light at the end of the tunnel from this thing is pretty short, with the exception of maybe New York City. I mean, New York and the broader metro area is accounting for most of the problems in the United States right now. You know, Washington, Oregon, California are past the peak and so forth. Colorado never has had much of a problem. Texas hasn't had much of a problem. Florida hasn't had much of a problem. So, you know, this is going to be kind of a rolling wave. There's not going to be flip the switch and everything's back to normal. So you're going to have to be aware of not packing 200 people in the room at the same time for a while until people get comfortable again. But things are gradually going to get back to normal. And frankly, if you don't jump on the marketing and you don't jump on the virtual enrollment process, is, you know, is that this little thing will be over and you will have missed an opportunity to have maximized your results with this rather than freak out yourself. So just get in the progress, pull all the trigger on the marketing, but let's make this April better than last April. Let's make this May better than last May. And let's do a full-on renewal blitz and have more renewals than we've ever had before by really focusing on the service and development. And that'll fix your dropout rate too, because as most of you probably already know, the ones who are brown belts who are renewed for life, they've been showing up on the Zoom meetings. The white belts who just got started are the more difficult ones, and you got to get them in and get them going. Okay, on that note,
don't let a few difficult people ruin your positivity on the rest of them.
Yeah, there's no matter what's going on, there's going to be 1 or 2 every month. And once you learn that they should be gone, they can be gone as long as you have another bus of new people coming in the door. I will say though, if those who exert good leadership with their students and have a good relationship with their students have very few problems with any of that stuff, right? Is you don't have people freaking out on you. You don't have all that kind of stuff. You really have to have a good relationship and exert strong leadership. And left to people's own devices, any little crisis, and this is bigger than normal, is any little crisis will turn them off where they go histrionic on things. You've got to exert that leadership and keep them in the right direction. Okay, on that note, we'll call it a day. Post any questions and we'll follow up on renewals tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.